What is up, YouTube people? Eric here with Team Badman, and it is spoiler time. We have been waiting and waiting for weeks since we found out that Awakening was going to be released at the end of October. We've been waiting and wondering what new MPs and new masteries, new cards might be doing. And we are finally there. We've gotten our first set of spoilers for Awakening, and oh boy, are we going to have ourselves some fun. So for today, we got Blue Resolute Mastery, and the Goku MP stack that is going to come along with it. Actually, let me check them here. The Orange Retribution Mastery, I'm sorry, I couldn't remember the name of it, and the Vegeta MP stack that comes with it, as well as the Ultra Rare Assisted Kamehameha, which is going to be a very, very interesting tech choice for certain decks. But enough of my talking here. Instead, I'm just going to get into everything that we've got covered, because we've got a lot to go over. Before I start talking about all of the new cards, though, I'm going to talk about one very, very interesting highlight that came out of the latest blog post, and that's called the Frozen List. Now, I bet if you haven't read the blog post, you're wondering exactly what that is. Well, Panini decided that they are going to explicitly freeze certain cards and prevent them from being used in major tournaments for an indeterminate amount of time. Kind of similar how there's a temporary ban on Black Smoothest Drill. Well, not a ban, a limit to 1 per deck. But in this case, the Frozen List currently features all of the masteries from set 1. So Red Enraged, Blue Protective, Orange Adaptive, Black Devious, Saiyan Empowered, and Namekian Knowledge are all banned as of the release of Awakening on October 28th, which is a huge deal considering there are so many meta decks that utilize those masteries. But what it really means is they're not allowed to be used in organized play tournaments, so for casuals, of course, you can use them. They did mention that cards will need to be around for a minimum of 2 years before they can reach the Frozen List. So, you know, if you're using some of those set 3 cards like your Red Relaxations, or if you're enjoying cards from Perfection or whatever, you're fine for the time being, but it's very clear that the Frozen List is going to eventually expand, and it's very much going to be like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Or a Magic limited or a ban list, and so it's going to be really, really interesting. Quite possibly the most important note there is that MPs will never be frozen. So we're completely open throughout the remainder of the game, but we're just going to have to change up some of our meta choices here a little bit. I know it impacts me, it probably impacts a lot of you guys. So if you guys have any feedback on it, be sure to leave it down in the comments section. I would love to hear what you guys have to think about cutting off some of the stalwart masteries that have been in the game so far. But enough about old masteries and old cards. Let's get to all the exciting new stuff. So today, as I mentioned, we got 2 brand new masteries and 2 MP stacks, and I'm going to go ahead and start with the masteries just because it's a little bit easier to cover them right out of the gate. First up is the Blue Resolute Mastery, which has a continuous power that all of your attacks deal +1 life card of damage, which if we know from Black Devious or Orange Adaptive or even the Red Ruthless Mastery, that extra damage buffs are really, really nice for some of our attacks. And it's no less in Blue Style, which has some really, really strong attacks to it outright, such as Blue Head Knock, Blue Skid, Blue Slide, Blue Floating Beam. There are a lot of strong attacks in here. Being able to buff those up extra and get just that much closer to critting is really, really useful. And there's going to be a lot of application with this mastery for some more aggressive kind of decks. But it's also got a little bit more of a defensive side to it as well, which is noted by its in-combat power, which you can discard a card from your hand to draw a card and prevent 4 life cards and 4 power stages of damage from the next attack performed against you. Now this is really useful, of course, in combination with MPs that already wick off amounts of damage, which we are going to see in the Goku MP stack that we're going to look up shortly. But there's also application with Garlic Jr. or with more defensive-oriented decks. And it's also got a lot of application with some of the discard cards that you can utilize for effects. Particularly Blue Guard, in which case, because it's all one continuous sentence, you can go ahead and banish that, get a 2-card draw, and still be able to prevent the damage from the next attacks, which is really useful. I think there's going to be a lot more application with some of the newer cards we're going to see in later sets, as the blog post did mention. So, you know, it could be really interesting to see what kind of damage prevention we're going to have. In this case, it may be worth busting out the old Cell Stack, some of those Sinister Chokes, in order to work around that effect. Hi, Kitty. Nice to see you. And along with that, we have the Orange Retribution Mastery, which harkens back a little bit to some of the other Orange Masteries that we've seen in the game, but it also has some really cool twists in and out that make it similar to other Masteries as well. At the start of your opponent's first turn, there's a parenthetical effect that you can apply which allows you to search for a styled, non-continuous effect drill and place it into play. So once again, we're back to utilizing drills here. It seems to be a little bit of a niche for Orange, and I'm actually kind of bummed out a little bit that it's still reliant on drills, but Orange has some really effective drills they can utilize for this. You get out Defense Shield really early, or you could get out Orange Possession Drill if you feel like running that again for some extra hand advantage. So there's plenty that you can still pull out with this, and I can see it being useful with some of the drill-oriented MPs like Android 20 or Trunks, and you can get some really fun effects out of this. It also has a continuous effect that whenever your MP changes levels, you can shuffle all drills that you control into their respective owner's life decks. So once again, you're able to get drills back. While they may not stay out like Adaptive, or while you may not be able to rejuve them like Adept, I think it's kind of a perfect middle ground in there, so that way you still get all of your drills back and you can utilize them later using some of your other drill tech cards. But you don't get to completely abuse the effects throughout the entirety of the game, and there's a little bit necessity to start explicitly teching some board hate in there. Along with that, there is a power that you can use every turn that the next style attack you perform as combat has its power stage cost reduced to 0, which first off, that's nice enough as it is, especially considering that you've got some really heavy hitter cards that have some high costs like Orange Accumulated Burst or Orange Revenge, or even just play on cards like Orange Stare Down or Orange PowerPoint. And this can be really useful, especially if the physically aggressive meta stays as it is. It allows you to not have to worry as much about your stage cost, and instead you can just keep throwing out some attacks. But along with that, you get a very Namekian Restorative effect that you can raise your anger up to 2 levels, and if your MP has changed levels as combat, you can search your life deck for a style drill and place it into play. So it's free drill tech if you've leveled. It's got some extra anger in there. I can see a lot of those kind of anger cards coming back out, the Orange Rages and Orange Eruptions and Orange Combined Burst. So I can see Orange Anger taking off a little bit with this. The lack of a damage buff is something that Orange players are going to have to get used to, I would think, because both the previous masteries have had them. But you don't really need them when you've got that extra anger effect, and Namekian Restored players know this very well. So there can be some really fun applications, and I'm excited to see what they can do with the Vegeta stack that we're going to take a look at right now. So now we're on to the MPs, and before I even take a look at what they do or their power levels or anything like that, I want to take a comment on the art style, which if you guys have seen some of our videos before and you saw the video that I did with Mr. Waffles about aesthetics in the card game, you'll know that I'm a real stickler about the starter MPs. If you look at the original MPs in the Premier set, they looked really good. There weren't these crazy borders around them. The artwork, popped out. It felt a little bit more like an actual full art card than something that had this picture kind of shoehorned in the corner. But Evolution, it forced Baby into a corner, so to speak, and there are just these tiny little images over in this little kind of image section here. Didn't really do a lot of the MPs justice, and that's one thing. Oh, sorry about that. That is one thing that I noticed that they fixed on these latest MPs here for Awakening. They actually brought it back to a little bit larger of a size for the artwork. They're crossing over some of the borders. They've got hair that might get cut off or that might be seen in a different text box or something like that. And it actually looks pretty good. I'm not going to complain about it, especially since we haven't seen a lot of the other MPs thus far. So I think it could be really promising about how all of the artwork looks for these MPs, especially when we get to Hercule and Cell and the excitingness that is a brand new Gohan stack. Does it look amazing, like out of this world? I don't necessarily think so, but I think the artwork is a vast improvement over Evolution, and it's just gonna continue to look better as we start to see more new MP stacks. So props on you, Panini, for that. I really like that. If you guys haven't seen the video that I'm actually talking about the aesthetics, I'll include a link right down here so that you guys can see that. It's just a video between me and Mr. Waffles. It's pretty good, and a lot of you guys who watch it seem to like it, so be sure to check that out if you haven't. But enough about the artwork and everything like that. Instead, we're just going to get down to the nitty-gritty of the MPs. And as I mentioned at the end of the Orange Retribution discussion, we're going to start with Vegeta, which I think a lot of players have been just really excited and really interested to see what he does. And I don't necessarily think a lot of players are disappointed right now. So once again, the Vegeta stack isn't really reliant on a whole lot of offensive actions, but instead he's got extra powers, extra buffs, and things like that that have some really cool effects throughout the entirety of the game. So Vegeta's level 1 starts off with that coveted 3 PUR, which seems to be an ever-growing thing, but still really nice to have, especially since his power level maxes out at 250,000. Not the highest in the game, but it's pretty high. He starts off relatively high as it is, so there's no complaints there. He's got a parenthetical on there that says damage from your non-style attacks can only be modified by this card's effect, which might be, you know, kind of off. You're planning to play a buff-related master, you're planning to use some buffing drills. But his continuous says your non-style attacks deal +2 life cards of damage, which is basically a free android attack drill if you're playing an android, but in this case you're not, because you're playing Vegeta, who is just a more beloved character, I would at least like to think. But that's a really nice buff to have, especially with the power of a lot of non-styled cards that are out there right now. It might be incentive to bring back, you know, some of the Sinister Chokes or some of the, just some of the other cards that might be out there that are really useful, just so they get that extra buff early game. But Vegeta has an offensive power on this level, despite what I said earlier. He's got an energy attack costing 1 stage for 1 life card, and it banishes a card from your opponent's discard pile. Now, the modifier that's on Vegeta 1 applies to it, so you're always throwing an energy attack for 3 life, costing 1 stage, and it's a free banish, in which discard pile hate is woefully underrepresented right now in the game, so having that on MP level is actually really, really nice. The damage is pretty respectable, and it's a relatively good starting point, especially compared to what we have had with the prior 2 stacks, so he can actually kick it into gear a little bit as he starts out the game, and he doesn't have to worry about getting to a higher level or running something like Orange Devouring Drill or Unleash to really be effective. So Vegeta busts out his golden hair for his level 2, and he gets a little bit more disruptive and a little bit more entertaining on this level. I feel like it might try to be a little bit too cute for its own good, but there's a lot of practical application here, especially against some more control-based decks. So there's a parenthetical on Vegeta 2 that says when you reach this level during combat, your opponent can only attack or pass in his next action. So that belies a lot of decks that might try to use black power up to get out of combat, or might be reliant on MP power that's not an offensive action, or utilize a setup or something like that. So it's a little bit disruptive and helps kind of mess with the flow of those control-based decks. There's a continuous effect on Vegeta as well that says your non-style attacks deal +1 life card damage and cannot have their damage prevented, which, if we know from Yamcha level 3, this can be really, really powerful throughout the course of the game, especially for being a level 2, which you could reach early to mid-game, and you could really start messing with people in a very freestyle-oriented kind of deck. Along with that, Vegeta has an in-combat power that raises your anger 1 level, and you gain 3 power stages on him. So it's an extra way to gain stages back, especially in a meta right now that's, you know, constantly about, you know, keeping those stages high, being able to throw some of your attacks. It's overall a pretty solid level. I think, like I said, it might try to be a little bit too cute for its own good, but if you've got an easy way to get up to that level 2 or maybe even higher, it can really kind of shift the momentum unexpectedly for a lot of decks. And I think with the Orange Retribution Mastery, especially with the ease of gaining anger there and the obvious focus on drills and being able to pull them back out, it could be a lot of fun to just really, you know, kind of reset yourself and get back to some kind of focused advantage just by reaching this level. So Vegeta comes back again with some non-styled power for level 3, and oh boy, are we going to have ourselves some fun with this one. So Vegeta has a parenthetical effect both on this and on his level 4 that says when you reach this level during combat, your opponent must pass their next action in this combat, which is extremely, extremely dangerous, as we know, you know, the whole passing thing and being able to completely shut out combat right there without having to worry about the effects of, say, Stomach Crusher or Paragus Ally is insanely, insanely effective. So anger leveling decks could be a real strong suit for Vegeta, especially if they can get up to this level, you know, relatively quickly. Not only that, but he's got a continuous effect that says the first time one of your non-styled attacks is stopped this combat, well, one of your non-styled attack cards, it stays in play to be used a second time. And your non-style attacks deal 3 extra life cards of damage. So we get to harken back to the old Villain Vegeta level 3, so we get some serious buffs there. The ability to keep out a non-styled card a second time is absolutely ridiculously powerful when you consider something like Vegeta's Gallic Gun, or Sinister Choke, or Vegeta's Destruction Blast. There's a lot of possibility here to deal some absolutely massive damage with this card. And it's going to be a really, really strong suit for some of those fast leveling, aggressive kind of decks. So I could see, Red Ruthless leveling decks becoming a thing. Orange Retribution, of course, would be a great fit for this. Unleashed decks would gain a lot of benefit out of it. There's a lot of aggressive application that we can see out of Vegeta, and I, for one, am actually very excited about that, because along with the assisted Kamehameha that we are going to see later on in this video, there's a lot of just raw aggression that he is really bringing up. That's something I see, especially considering that Panini has kind of messed with his past 2 stacks. So, hopefully this one will actually see some play, and with effects like these, I can see it being pretty worthwhile if you do play it. And lastly, we get to Vegeta's level 4, which is appropriately dubbed Pinnacle of Power. Man, if I haven't seen a cool looking subtitle for an MP yet, this definitely has to be it. As I mentioned before, he has a parenthetical effect that when you reach this level, your opponent must pass for his or her next action in this combat, so it's tremendously disruptive. But his continuous says your non-style attacks cannot be stopped and deal +3 life cards of damage. So it's guaranteed attacks that are going through. There's going to be a really, really big focus now on a lot of those non-styled cards. And there's just insane amount that this guy can do. I feel like if Black Devious weren't getting shut off by the whole Frozen list, that you could see a really freestyle-oriented Black Devious deck just swinging for huge amounts of damage with some insanely powerful cards. That said, this is a really, really late game level. And it's definitely one that's going to be a closer for, just a whole lot of decks that are going to be focused on it. But at the same time, the whole stack really kind of skews your deck building approach, because you have to rely less on those styled cards, less on the ones that you really want to tech in there. Instead, you have to really focus on a lot of the non-style stuff, which is great, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, I can expect to see a lot of that non-styled hate come around. Blue Slide could come back into vogue. The Cell ally could be a really, really big deal. Cell's level 2 would be really useful here. And there's a lot that, this stack is really kind of changing in a very deck-oriented focus. And it's something that I think is really cool, but could also be really dangerous. But ultimately, that's up to the players, so we're going to have to see. And lastly, for our MPs, we're going to talk about the Goku stack. Now, the previous Goku stacks have been very gimmicky and very, focused on very one niche kind of thing. Premier set had drills, Evolution had allies, but this time we finally get away from a real gimmicky Goku stack. Instead, we're focused on one thing, and that is raw hand advantage, which is something just absolutely insane. We all know how powerful it is by virtue of, Brawly or Yamcha. And in this case, Goku is going to be the exact same deal. So, Goku, on his level 1, has a constant power that says your attacks deal +1 life card of damage, which is great, especially since he's being packed with the blue Resolute Mastery, which says your attacks deal +1 life card of damage. So if you manage to pull him for a draft kind of event, or if you just want to use him and deal a whole bunch of damage, you're getting a really good start. Along with that, he's got a when entering combat instant power that says draw a card. Okay, just, being able to enter any combat, even the very first combat of the game, and have an immediate hand advantage over your opponent, that's just good. He doesn't need to have an attack here necessarily on this level, because if you build your deck right and you've got that extra hand advantage, boom, you're basically set to go right out of the gate. It's essentially a free smoothness drill, and you don't even need to run it. I can see a lot of decks really utilized now with cards that draw more cards. I can see red relaxation decks, getting a whole ton of benefit out of this. I can see orange actually bring back something like possession drills. That way you can just keep drawing cards into your hand. I can see instant transmission being greatly used with this Goku. So that way you can be like, oh, I'll take your relaxation. I'll take your expert assistance. I'll take your Master Roshi slumber and stack my hand. Okay, I'm completely cool with that. So, it's nice to see Goku get away from a silly kind of gimmick and into something that I think a lot of players could really, really get behind. So Goku's level 2 continues the trend of damage buffs and drawing cards. His continuous says your attacks deal +1 life card damage, and your opponent's attacks deal -1 life card of damage. So you're getting a little bit into the Garlic Jr. kind of zone with preventing some of the damage, which makes perfect sense considering that he's got Blue Resolute Mastery, and that is all about preventing damage. Along with that, his power you can use anytime during combat says draw the bottom card of your discard pile, and you may discard a card from your hand to use a critical damage effect. So if Red and Rage Mastery hadn't necessarily been banned here, you could put together some pretty wicked combos. You know, you could draw that bottom card and whatever it is, and maybe you've got, something that's dead in your hand. Maybe you've got a Red Blaze that you drew, or maybe you've got a Red Sacrifice or Red Restraint. So that way you can just, combo a lot of your cards out. It can be really useful hand recycling, but either way, it's still extra hand advantage. And if you manage to level off of Goku 1 to Goku 2 in the middle of a combat, that's just an extra card that you get. So, easily enough, I don't really need to talk too much about these levels so far. It's just, get a card. Do something with that card. It's pretty easy, and I think a lot of players are really going to appreciate that, myself included. So next we get to Goku level 3, and if we look at the prior stacks we had for Goku, level 3 is really a strong suit for Goku. His premier stack had an energy attack for 5 life, you could pull out a setup or drill, and if it hit you got to rejuvenate up to 5 from your discard. His level 3 in the evolution was an attack for 6 life cards, and you could pull out an ally and they can make an action regardless of the power stage that combat. Plus if they perform the action in the next phase's combat, it can't be stopped, which is perfectly great. And Goku continues that trend once again. In this case, he's got, again, a continuous power that says your attacks deal +2 life cards of damage, so we're getting into the very Vegeta-ish kind of buff here. He's dealing a really considerable amount of damage, and that's something that a lot of players are going to get behind, especially in draft-oriented kind of play, which we're going to see a lot of at the start of the release of the set. This time, he actually has an offensive power. He has a physical attack that says draw the top or bottom card of your discard pile, and it's for AT +2 life cards, which that's great because his Goku stack reaches F at its top 2 power stages, and he's got that +2 life card buff along with it. So essentially, if you get there with Blue Resolute, you're dealing an AT +5 life card attack. Even if you've got nothing off your AT, that's still enough to deal critical damage right there. That's really, really powerful, and it's going to be a good mid to late game spot, I think, for this Goku stack. It's going to be something that you'd want to exploit. It's a perfect way to start filtering cards out of your discard pile, and it's a way to continue prolonged combat. So you can lead off with a solid kind of offensive card, maybe something you really want to hit with. Then you can just get it back the next action, provided that your opponent doesn't, actually attack or doesn't force you to block, or maybe use a block that's banished after use. There are a lot of ways that I can see yourself really setting this up, and Red Ruthless decks could actually really enjoy this, both for the life card buff and because they've got so many cards that can stack the discard pile, and it allows you to just filter out what you don't want and instead utilize what you do. It's a perfect level for just about any point in the game, and it's something I've been waiting to see out of a Goku stack. I'm waiting to see him get aggressive, get to punching things, just doing what Goku should be doing, and that's trying to beat down the baddies, and I think this level really kind of nailed it. And of course, we have to end with Goku's level 4, in which if his prior 2 stacks said anything, he likes to mess with every possible zone in the game. And, oh man, it bothers me. It bothers me that he can still search stuff out of the Banished Zone, but in this case, it's just so ridiculously powerful that I'm just waiting to see the application of it. So Goku's continuous is a buff up of his level 2. Your attacks deal +2 life cards, and your opponent's attacks deal -2 life cards. Totally expected. His power allows you to search your life deck, discard pile, or Banished Zone for any styled card and put it into your hand. So you know what? What's the point of having a Banished Zone anymore if you can just start picking cards out of it? First we had Frieza, who could rejuvenate name cards out of the Banished Zone. Then you've got Cooler, who can rejuvenate styled cards out of the Banished Zone. And now Goku's just like, oh, I'll just look through this inconveniently named discard pile, and I'll just go ahead and start pulling cards out. It's really ridiculous. In contrast to the Vegeta stack, which is going to be focused on that non-styled stuff, this Goku likes your styled cards. He likes them a lot. And in this way, you can exploit just an absolutely insane amount of cards. You can run Blue Terror and use it every single turn. If you're in red, you could get back Red Relaxation, and you could use that every turn to screw your opponent out of their control deck with Red Restriction. You could get, Saiyan cards back. There's there's an insane amount that this can do, and it makes sense that it's a level 4, but why are we messing with the Banished Zone? Come on, guys. There's a reason it's called Banished. Just... I don't know why I'm complaining. It's a really good level to end a stack on. And, you know, it's still just going to bother me, especially considering the Goku's level 4 is called Goku Selfless, and yet being able to pick cards back out of the Banished Zone is quite possibly the most selfish thing that I think an MP stack could want to do. Nonetheless, there's going to be some ridiculous application, and I think we're finally starting to see some hero aggro MPs that we're actually going to get some utilization out of, which I'm actually very, very excited about that. Shh, don't tell anybody. As if the Saiyans didn't get enough love, they got an almost tailor-made ultra rare in our very first ultra rare appearance, Assisted Kamehameha. Now it's exactly the artwork you were thinking, and of course it's the most fitting artwork that you could possibly find, and with the right foil pattern, this would just look phenomenal. So I'm really excited to see what the foil pattern looks like, even if it's just for the sake of this card. But it's an energy attack costing 2 stages. If your MP is a Saiyan, you basically get the Saiyan Sword Strike treatment, which it can't be stopped or have its damage prevented. Which is... oh, God. Oh, that is so good. It's insane, because basically with either of the 2 stacks that we have seen so far today, if you get this out, you're guaranteed to crit, you're guaranteed to do an insane amount of damage. Of course, you know, this card is going to be banished after use because of just how powerful it is. You know, it's a base 4 life, 2 stages, and, you know, in any deck that you're going to run it in, of course it's going to be a Saiyan. So it's basically the second coming of Destructo Disc, and with all the modifiers that we've got so far, I can see this card getting eroded down to a limited amount really, really quickly. It's probably going to be one of the most in-demand ultras that we've seen for quite a while. It's not necessarily alignment limited, so, you know, Brawly can get some benefit out of this. Raditz can get benefit out of this. There are a lot of MPs who are really, really going to enjoy this card. And as a result, I think you're going to see its price get jacked up a little bit too much, so you might want to get them early on. But nonetheless, Saiyans, especially for Saiyan style, have been kind of underrepresented on the hero side. It really took Brawly to kind of push Saiyan and Saiyan MPs in general really through the stratosphere. Even though we've had Trunks and we've had the other Goku stacks and we've had Raditz, and there's so many that we've just had to be useful. But this is going to be an immediate tech card that you're going to find in just about any Saiyan deck, and for very, very good reason. So that's everything that we got in this first release here, and man, if all the cards are like this in the set, we're going to have ourselves a really, really fun time. So, you know, that's our quick look. I hope it stayed a little bit quicker than some of the other ones that we had last time. If it didn't, I really, really apologize. But if you guys liked it, be sure to give those thumbs up down below. I would love your thumbs, you know, I greatly appreciate it. If not, click the dislike button, let me know what you guys didn't like, so that way I can fix it for next week when we take a look at the next set of masteries and whatever cards get released throughout the week. Also, if you guys haven't hit that subscribe button down below, be sure to do so that way you can follow these and follow all of our other series. We've got a whole bunch of stuff coming up like we always do. There's a lot of really, really promising stuff that we'll find as we make our way into Awakening and further on throughout, you know, the rest of this year and even into next year. And lastly, if you haven't found us on social media, all of our links are down below. So you guys can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. You can find us on Libsyn, which for those guys who don't know, it's podcast hosting. And we are going to have one of those up here really, really, really soon. There's going to be a lot to talk about throughout the next few weeks, so you guys can expect to hear about all of that. Be sure to hit us up over there. So that's going to do it for this Quick Looks. I'm Eric with Team Badman signing out. So thank you guys so much for watching. And like always, stay bad. We'll see you guys next week for the Black Conflict Mastery and Hercule. Get excited, guys. I know I am. We'll catch you later.